Well, here we are! I genuinely did not think this day would come, but Primos, the brand new Disney cartoon, is finally released after over a year of screaming and endless backlash surrounding it. This was for a myriad of reasons. The main one being folks deeming it kind of offensive for one of the few cartoons out there that focuses on a Mexican-American family to seemingly play into all the stereotypes you'd expect. You know, with a comically large family with names like Gordita and Nacho. They lived in a town that was basically called Earthquake Heights, which people find insensitive as apparently they're very common in that region. I still plan on releasing my cartoon set in Ireland called Famine Farms. Jokes aside, because of all this, and some of the crew not making things easier on themselves, like the main character's voice actress claiming that the people upset about the misuse of certain Spanish phrases were just grammar which was not a good look. When making stuff on the internet, you learn the lesson time and time again that sometimes saying nothing's just better. But that didn't happen, and because of all this, Disney wound up deleting the theme song from their YouTube, as the fate of the series was now up in the air. What would they do? Cancel it? Wouldn't be that surprising in this day and age where fully completed works are sent to die in the ether. And you know, no matter what you may think of this series, that's not a good thing. A lot of people undoubtedly worked hard to get this show in the air. I'm sure a lot of folks got their first real animation gig on this. And the creator herself, Natasha Klein, wife of Hey Arnold creator coincidentally enough, seems like a nice person who genuinely wanted to share her own experiences growing up and feeling out of touch with her heritage. And because of that, her voice certainly deserves to be heard in some form. Like, it's not her fault the voice actress had to go and make things infinitely worse. Either way, a couple months back, Primos returned out of thin air, back on schedule to finally be released with some subtle changes, like the time now being referred to as Hacienda, that's what it is. Like the town now being referred to as Hacienda Hills. Apparently there was more dialogue added in to make it apparent this was not Mexico and instead the glorious streets of Los Angeles. They even went so far as to change the name of one of the main characters, Cuquita now being named Lucida for reasons I don't need to get into. So evidently some of the backlash stuck with them. I'm sure Disney, not wanting to throw aside all the money and effort put into this project, gave word down that the main factors people took issue with needed to be changed as best they could, at least as much as they could without resulting in that much new work needing to be done. Just pull the voice actors back in to re-record some stuff, re-lip sync it as best you can, and let's just hope for the best. And so now Primos is officially out, the first 9 episodes have been released, and now it's finally time to ask the question. Was any of this warranted? Did the show deserve all the backlash it received, or was it yet another case of the internet blowing stuff out of proportions in order to find something to complain about that week? Well, I don't know, I haven't seen it yet, BRB. Huh. They did a Saw parody, that's a point up in my book. So Primos stars Tater. She's 9 years old and this summer she finally wants to try and find herself. Her final form, if you will, which they always just represent with her head on top of Goku, which certainly doesn't help with the vagueness of a goal like that. It's not like it really comes into play all that often. I gotta reiterate that only the first 9 episodes with 2 segments each have been released so far, so of course what I say here isn't gonna be indicative of the entire season. But as of now, I don't really get what the point in her tiger conscious is. Like, okay, I get the point, but he pops up so infrequently, and as we'll soon see, the last thing this show needs is more characters, that I can't really understand why it needed to even be here. Which sucks because I wish they'd justified its inclusion. I'm always a big fan of the character has their conscious incarnate following them around trope, but here you forget it's even a factor. Same with her whole diary segment, I wish that were more of a consistent thing. We get to actually hear her own thoughts for a bit, but that's kinda made redundant because of the tiger, but then the tiger is kinda made redundant because of the diary, I don't know. Either way, her summer is completely sent off the rails after finding out that all 12 of her cousins are gonna be staying with them, and so now she has to try and coexist with them while butting heads with their wacky personalities.
Divide and conquer. It'll be easier to shake the Primos individually. Then
a lot of people compared this to the Casa Grandes on Nickelodeon, which was already just the Loud House again. But I think Primos does more than enough to stand out once you actually start watching it. Now 12 characters sounds like a lot. And you're completely right. It gets even more packed when you factor in Tater and her family. See, I can tell this is her sister because they unnaturally stopped the scene to explain it to me.
Oh, Tater, my big but littler sister. Good thing you have me to break it to you.
But yeah, she's got a mom, dad, sister, and baby brother too. Don't forget their grandmother and granddad, bringing the amount of characters under one roof to a clean 19. Jesus. It's weird because in what we've seen so far, I was honestly shocked at how not chaotic this show is. The first couple episodes go as you'd expect, you know, she gets upset and overwhelmed by her cousins invading her home, before eventually learning that living with them won't be so bad. Even ending on a nice little note where they designate her own space in a room that none of them will touch. which is immediately undercut a few episodes in as they've taken over there too, great. But after that, everyone kinda branches off for the most part. Us mainly only getting episodes that are one-on-one time between Teeter and whatever cousin they want to focus on. And with there being so many characters living here and only a few of them being relevant in certain episodes, it makes the house feel super empty at times, like there should be more going on. But at the very least, you only get that feeling sometimes. For the most part, they do a good job at throwing a bunch around the background, so you know they still, like, coexist and all. But because of that limited approach where we can only really tackle one of them at a time, while being good at allowing each of them to have slightly more depth, it kinda makes it hard for you to grow attached to any of them because, well, who knows when they'll get some focus again. I liked what they were going for with episode 6 and Big Nacho Ramirez. He even has a pretty good song too. But at the same time, I think I'd enjoy it a lot more if this were a character I had seen do anything other than standing around and farting for a majority of his appearances so far. Lighthouse was pretty clever in treating the family like a unit despite their varied personalities. They ease you into it so you have some time to grow accustomed to them all. Not to mention, I think all the Lighthouse kids have much better designs that make it easier to understand their personalities just by looking at them. There also isn't one that looks like this. This meant that when they did single them out later on, you've at least had some time to care about them first. Enough to give a shit about what's going on in their personal lives at least. But even that was a pretty controversial decision in that show, given how one-note they all are. And while it seems as if Primos is actively doing this to prevent that issue by giving each of them more time, I just can't see that working unless the show gets like 50 episodes. Which who knows if Disney will even want to bother with it this rate, given the headache I'm sure its pushback caused. But I really couldn't tell you which of the Primos I liked. I can barely remember half their names. There's the cool older one who was definitely the best out of all them, just because they give you greater insight into her actual life and what her goals are, but, you know, great. I know, like this character, I hope they do something soon among the other 19. Because of all that, the show really relies on Teeter to be an interesting character. She's the one with the most depth, and so it's kind of her job to carry the series. And while I find her voice pretty obnoxious, which I think they did too, is when singing the voice actress completely drops it. Honestly, side tangent here, a lot of these voice actors are talented, but I could not understand the thought process behind some of them. Why does the little boy sound like a little boy, yet this fucking 3-year-old sounds like this?
He's still pretty shy.
And you're still pretty adorable, Lucita.
Hee, I'm laughing, hee. Anyways, I like that she feels like a bratty kid. The happy-go-lucky character who couldn't hurt a fly is a protagonist I'm honestly getting a little tired of, and so I was happy to not see her fall into that and actually be extremely pissed off at the thought of her cousins living with her. It's something she's gotta get over, which is a lot more interesting to me than her being A-okay from the get-go. Some of my favorite episodes were actually the ones focusing on her, like where she gets a pimple and is super proud to show it off before going outside and actually getting self-conscious about her appearance. Favorite episode, and it barely has anything to do with the Primos, perfect. Something I definitely grew more fond of over time was the art style, even if I am getting sick of a lot of cartoons having to look like this now. But the backgrounds are great, I love the colors used on them, focusing on warmer tones which fits the summer vibe. I like the pencil texture used for the line art, and the animation itself is fine. Usually pretty stilted, but appreciated when they get more wacky with the expressions. But it's all ruined by the posing, it is so boring. I hate that the characters have these noodle limbs, but they're almost always posed super rigidly. Always standing completely straight. Why are half of these characters doing the same pose? Right at the start of the series when Teeter reveals herself, I thought for a split second, wow, the way that was animated and the way she's posed here isn't anywhere near as stiff and lifeless as I thought it would be. So it's just my luck this was the exception and not the standard. There's just so much more life that could be brought out of these characters if they were allowed to be more expressive. I hate it because they get so close at times. It's weird, despite looking a little off at times, I find the pitch Bible that was leaked a while back infinitely more appealing than what we ended up with. Like, just look at the way her sister is drawn here. This is a way more appealing design. You get exactly what this character is about by looking at him, hard Henry ass.
Wow, it's like you both think I'm nothing but a supporting role to aid your character development. Real protagonist, out!
But then you see her in the final show and it's just, like, fine looking. They're still freaky though. That tiny one also didn't exist yet, I guess, which hey, would cut down on the characters a bit. Credit where credit's due though, a couple other designs are better now, like the scientist kid and the goth girl. Goth? Emo? I don't know, whatever. Point is, I wish a lot of cartoons today didn't have to get so standardized from concept to release. Of course, that's fine to happen, but there's certainly a balance that can be made here, right? I guess the biggest question everyone is interested in answering here though is, did it deserve the heat? Except Alpha Jet called his video that, so now I gotta think of something else. No matter the quality of Primos, I think the answer would have always been no. And not because what they had shown pre-release wasn't worth criticizing. I mean, them deciding to change those few elements will always be seen as nothing more than an admission of defeat by the masses. But I think the sheer amount of discussion around the series was certainly excessive. And I'm at fault for this too, I ain't the clear here either. The internet just loves to have something to fight against, especially giant corporations. And so when a show comes along that seems to be doing everything people hate, then it's no shock it ended up getting the response it did. Simply saying, just give attention to shows you like instead, isn't a realistic solution here because, well, again, let's be real. People are reactionary, and oftentimes act like they care about an issue more than they actually do. I think it's safe to assume most people who were bitching about Primos never even intended on watching it. It was just the new thing to cry about. Ugh, this kid show is offensive! Did you see what they called the town? Did you see what they called the kid character? Okay, sorry, we get it, we changed all that stuff. Do you want to watch the show now? Sorry, what show? I think a lot of people, though, just find the discussion interesting. You know, you can criticize a show pre-release without wanting it to be burned to the ground, cancelled, fire the creator, that heathen. I only wish this massive backlash could have been directed at a show more deserving of it. Not that I can think of any right now, but this show definitely didn't warrant all this. Because at the end of the day, at best, Primos is occasionally charming with some funny moments here and there that I'm sure a good chunk of kids will enjoy and relate to, while at worst, it is painfully average with a character list that's way too long for what they were given. I sadly think Primos is too far gone at this point. I'm positive Disney made their mind up on this thing long before release, just you put it out there, release whatever promotional stuff was already planned, and let's just hope that people slowly forget about it. Fuck if I know, though.